legislation. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Mr Speaker.
I call Tim McIndoe.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Chairman of the Justice and Electoral Committee is indeed in the House and is delighted to accept Mr Chevelle's invitation to follow him in this debate. In fact, that seems to be my standard practice. I can't think of many times when I don't follow Mr Chevelle. Could I just crave the indulgence of the House for one moment and to acknowledge the outstanding Shakespeare. I'm going to move right along. to acknowledge the outstanding Shakespearean performance of Kennedy Graham in the previous debate, because it was wonderful to have Shylock speaking in the budget policy debate, and I find now that I follow Hamlet in this particular debate as he has agonised over the Labour Party's position on this particular bill that is before the House. And of course, this particular bill is, of course, an interim measure, and we mustn't forget that. Mr Speaker, National is firmly committed to building a safer New Zealand, and I do want to repeat that because it's an absolutely core priority for our government. This bill is part of a large measure, a large arsenal of initiatives to improve public safety and respect for law and order, and indeed the rule of law in this country. We are committed to improving the rights of victims and the support that is offered to them. And so we should. For no one chooses to be a victim or to become caught up in our criminal justice system because of the offending of others. So I do look forward to the cooperation of members opposite, as has just been indicated by Mr Chevelle, and I appreciate that indication of support, and I look forward to working with them to facilitate the passage of this bill through the business agenda of the Justice and Electoral Committee. The bill's purpose is to amend the Prisoners and Victims Claims Act of 2005 to extend the restrictions on the awarding of compensation for one more year, from 1st of July of this year until the 30th of June 2013, and to ensure that the victims' claims process applies to any compensation awarded or to be paid pursuant to an out-of-court final settlement in respect of a prisoner's claim made on or after the 1st of July of this year, but before the 1st of July 2013. So, as I've said, it's an interim measure, but it's no less important for that. We are, on this side of the House, directing prisoner compensation to victims, to put victims at the heart of our criminal justice system. Victims have to deal with the financial, emotional and physical effects of crime long after it has been committed. And as I mentioned when I spoke in the financial review debate yesterday, this is something that no one chooses to be in the position of having to endure yet again everything that they suffered as a result of the offending of someone else, often in the most gruesome of circumstances. So we're ensuring that victims are heard, that they get the support that they need, and that they're not brutalised again when the defendants who subjected them to such cruelty are tried. We're making sure that victims get better information and protection when offenders are released back into the community. And how often have we all heard claims of absolute despair and disgust when that principle hasn't been followed? At the same time, we're modernising court processes to make the justice system safer and more efficient. We're speeding up court cases, reforming legal aid and improving civil justice. All of these are important initiatives that the public has been calling out for a long time. We are absolutely convinced that not only do we enjoy a very strong mandate to move in this direction, but that the public is demanding it of us, and we've got to ensure that we meet those demands, and we are. We established a victim compensation scheme which imposed, among other things, a $50 offender levy on all offenders regardless of the crime they commit. We did that in the face of considerable opposition from members opposite. Yet the levy has already, in its first year, collected more than twice the expected target of $2 million. In its first year, we paid out, through this levy, $1.64 million in services and entitlements for victims of crime and their families. The levy has funded 13 different services for victims of serious crime. These include grants for families of murder victims, funeral grants for families of murder victims, increases in travel, accommodation and childcare assistance for people who are having to go through the justice system. Access for sexual violence victims to a trained advisor who has knowledge of the dynamics of sexual violence cases, and they need ongoing support and great sensitivity and understanding. Expanded financial help of up to $1,000 for victims attending case-related hearings. New financial assistance and counselling for those whose family members have been killed through a criminal act that is not homicide, such as dangerous driving causing death. So, Mr. Speaker, there's a whole range of initiatives that are very important. We inherited a system where the criminal justice system was falling into some disarray. It was lacking accountability, particularly to those who were victims, and it lacked that focus on the needs of victims. So I'm very proud to be part of a government that has delivered, continues to deliver, and I commend this interim measure to the House as we continue to strengthen our justice system and give it the priorities that all New Zealanders require it to have.
The Honourable Leanne Dalzell.
Mr. Speaker, I too rise to make